My name is Elena Carter. I'm 35 years old, and I didn't know my life was about to split cleanly into a before and an after until 11:23 a.m. on a Thursday, while I was sitting in a glass-walled conference room pretending to care about quarterly projections. My phone vibrated once against the table. I ignored it. Then again, I glanced down, expecting some harmless update, maybe a delivery notification, maybe a reminder. Instead, I saw Mark's name, my boyfriend. The man I'd been with for 2.5 years. The man who had been living in my condo for the last 8 months. The text was long enough to feel wrong immediately. Hey babe, just FYI, I pawned that old Rolex from your dresser to make my student loan payment. I was about to default. You make good money. You can just buy another one. Love you. I read it once, then again, then a third time, slower, as if rearranging the words might make them say something else. That old Rolex wasn't just a watch. It was a 1971 Submariner, worn thin at the edges, scratched in places no jeweler would ever polish out. My father wore it every single day for 40 years, through construction jobs, through promotions, through my high school graduation, through chemotherapy. He gave it to me 18 months ago, 3 days before cancer finally took him. His hands were shaking when he fastened it around my wrist. So you don't forget me, he'd said. I excused myself from the meeting without explaining why. Walked down the hallway, locked myself into a bathroom stall, and sat there staring at the screen like it had personally betrayed me. Mark hadn't asked. He hadn't hesitated. He had decided. I typed back one sentence. Thanks for letting me know. Almost immediately, 3 heart emojis appeared. I knew you'd understand. You're the best. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Julia, a friend from law school who now specialized in criminal defense. She pawned my father's watch, I said quietly, without asking. How much is it worth? About $12,000. There was a pause. Elena, that's felony theft. She admitted it in writing. Screenshot everything. File a police report. Now. I went back to the meeting, nodded when expected, smiled when someone cracked a joke, drove straight to the police station afterward, hands steady in a way that surprised even me. The officer listened carefully, read the texts, looked at me with something between sympathy and disbelief. She doesn't own the watch? No, it was never hers. We'll assign a detective. That evening, Mark came home like nothing had happened, kissed my cheek, asked how my day was, unpacked groceries he'd bought with my credit card, humming like a man unburdened. That loan stress is finally gone, he said brightly. We should celebrate this weekend. I watched him move around my kitchen, touching things like they belonged to him. Sure, I thought. Let's celebrate. Inside, something cold and permanent had already settled. 2 days later, Detective Harris called. They'd confirmed the pawn transaction. Mark had signed for it, used his ID, received $3,200 for something worth nearly 4 times that. And there's fraud, the detective added. He claimed it was his property. Is there going to be an arrest? Yes, we'd prefer to do it somewhere public. I almost laughed. My boyfriend's mother's birthday dinner, I said. Tomorrow night. There was a pause. That will work. That night, Mark showed me the outfit he'd bought for the dinner. How do I look? He asked. Handsome, confident, completely unaware. You look great, I said. And for the first time since my father died, I felt something heavier than grief. I felt resolve. Saturday arrived with an eerie sense of normalcy, the kind that feels staged in hindsight, like calm music playing over the opening credits of a disaster. Mark moved through my condo that morning as if nothing in his world had shifted. He showered, shaved, hummed to himself, asked if I'd seen his black belt, commented on the weather. The man who had pawned my father's watch, the last thing my dad ever placed in my hands, looked relaxed, almost proud of himself. I watched him from the kitchen doorway, coffee cooling untouched in my mug. He was wearing the confidence of someone who had never faced consequences. You sure you're coming tonight? He asked, tightening his tie. Mom keeps asking. Of course, I said. I wouldn't miss it. He smiled, kissed my cheek again, and went back to adjusting his reflection. I noticed how he didn't ask about my mood, didn't notice my restraint, To him, silence had always meant approval. We drove separately. I told him I had a work call and might arrive late. He barely listened, already rehearsing birthday toasts in his head. The Rosewood restaurant was glowing when I arrived. Warm lighting, white tablecloths, laughter spilling out the front doors. I spotted Mark's family immediately. His mother, Linda, glowing in celebratory pink. His older sister, Emily. His younger brother, Ryan. Cousins, aunts, uncles. Nearly 20 people crowded around a long table. Mark waved when he saw me, patting the empty chair beside him. "You made it," he said, relieved. I said I would. The appetizers had just arrived when I saw them. 2 plainclothes officers entered quietly. 1 man, 1 woman. Calm, focused. They spoke briefly to the host, who nodded and gestured toward our table. My heart didn't race. It settled. The female officer approached first. "Mark Reynolds." He looked up, confused but smiling. "Yeah?" "I'm Detective Harris. You're under arrest for felony theft and fraud. Please stand up." The table froze. Forks hovered midair. Conversation collapsed into silence. Linda laughed nervously. "Oh, come on. This is a joke, right?" Mark's eyes darted between the officers and me. "Elena," he said. "What's happening?" "You stole my father's watch," I said quietly, "and pawned it without permission." His face drained of color. "But I told you," he stammered. "You said you understood." "I said, thanks for letting me know," I replied. Then I filed a police report. The cuffs came out. Mark stood slowly, disbelief hardening into panic. "You're seriously doing this?" he demanded. "Over a watch?" "That watch was my father's," I said. "You knew what it meant to me." Linda shot to her feet. "Someone explain this right now." "Your son stole a $12,000 watch from me," I said evenly, "and confessed in writing." Emily gasped. "Mark, tell me that's not true." "It was just sitting there," he snapped. "She never even wore it." I stood up. "You haven't paid a single bill in 2.5 years," I said. "I cover the mortgage, utilities, your car payment, your insurance, your food, your shopping, and you stole the one thing I can never replace." Ryan shook his head slowly. "Jesus, man." As the officers guided Mark away, he twisted back toward me, eyes wide, voice cracking. "I can't believe you'd do this to me at my mom's birthday. I can't believe you stole my dead father's watch and thought heart emojis would fix it." The entire restaurant stared as they led him out. Linda collapsed into a chair, trembling. "There has to be another way. He's your boyfriend." "He was," I corrected, until he decided my father's memory was worth $3,000 to him. I walked out without looking back. Mark was released on bail the next morning. I knew because my phone buzzed at noon with a ring notification. He stood outside my condo with Linda and Ryan, pounding on the door. "Elena," Mark shouted, "open this door." I watched through the camera, arms crossed. "You need to leave," I said through the speaker. "I live here." "No, you stay here. Your name isn't on the deed or the lease." Linda stepped forward. "Please, Elena, let's talk like adults." "Your adult son committed a felony," I replied. "We can talk through lawyers." Ryan tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mom, let's go." "You're taking her side?" Mark yelled. "You stole a $12,000 watch," Ryan shot back. "What did you expect?" "It was just a watch." That's when I opened the door, still chained. "It was my father's watch," I said. "The man who worked 3 jobs to raise me, who held my hand while he died. That watch was on his wrist for 40 years. Mark rolled his eyes. "Your dad's gone, Elena. He doesn't need it anymore." Even Linda gasped. Ryan closed his eyes. I nodded once. "Thank you. You just made this very easy." I tossed a key through the gap. "Your things are in storage unit 12 downstairs. You have 1 hour. Don't come back." Linda tried one last time. "If we pay you back, it's not about money," I said. "He took something irreplaceable and treated it like junk." Mark was crying now. "Where am I supposed to go?" "Not my problem anymore." I closed the door. Monday morning, my credit card company called. "Miss Carter, we flagged several unusual charges." "How many?" "Approximately $4,300. High-end retailers. Electronics. jewelry. Of course, I canceled the card, filed disputes, called Detective Harris. She's adding credit card fraud, she said calmly. Then came social media. Mark posted about his abusive ex, claimed I had him arrested for borrowing something, said I was controlling, manipulative. My inbox filled with strangers calling me cruel. I posted one thing: screenshots, the pawn receipt, his confession. The tide turned fast. Emily commented publicly, "Mark, stop. You know you were wrong." Mark called an hour later, screaming, "You turned my family against me!" "No," I said, "you did." He hung up. That afternoon, HR called. Linda had emailed them demanding action. I showed everything. My manager sighed. "Your ex is self-destructing." "Yeah," I said, "I'm just not cleaning it up anymore." Monday blurred into Tuesday, then Wednesday, time stretching in a strange, elastic way, long enough for consequences to multiply, but not long enough for Mark to understand that this wasn't a misunderstanding he could charm his way out of. The first official court notice arrived by certified mail. Felony theft, fraud, credit card fraud pending. I signed for it calmly, placed it on the counter, and stared at the envelope longer than necessary. There was a small, irrational part of me that still expected him to call and say something different this time, something human, something resembling remorse. Instead, he doubled down. Mark's post shifted tone once the comments turned against him. He deleted the most obvious lies and replaced them with vaguer ones. Stories about toxic relationships, about women who use the system to punish men for mistakes, about how love should come before property. I didn't respond, but the messages kept coming. Some were apologetic, others vicious. One woman messaged me to say I'd ruined a good man's life over materialism. I almost replied. Almost. Then I remembered the feel of my father's watch, heavy, warm from his skin, and closed the app. Detective Harris called Wednesday afternoon. "We've added the credit card charges to the file," she said. "That brings the total to $4,300. Is there anything else you need from me?" "Not yet, but his lawyer has requested a meeting." I laughed quietly. "Already?" "He thinks this can be reframed as a domestic dispute." Good luck with that. Thursday night, Linda showed up again, this time alone. She stood outside my door, eyes swollen, clutching her purse like a shield. I watched her through the peephole for a full minute before opening it, chain still on. "Elena," she whispered, "please." I don't think there's anything left to say. "There is," she insisted. "He's facing prison time. He should have thought about that before stealing from me." "He didn't think," she said desperately. "That's the problem. He never thinks things through." I met her eyes. "That's not a defense." She swallowed. "If you drop the charges, we'll pay restitution. The watch, the cards, everything. It's not my decision anymore." "You started this." "No," I corrected gently. "He did." Her voice broke. "He's my son. And he was my partner. We both loved him. Only one of us respected boundaries." Linda pressed her hand against the doorframe like she might collapse. "He's spiraling," she whispered. "Drinking, blaming you, saying you betrayed him." I felt a flicker of something. Pity, maybe. Or relief. Then maybe this is the first time no one's cleaning up his mess. She left without another word. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Mark's lawyer reached out twice. I declined to meet. The evidence spoke for itself. In the meantime, Mark found new ways to sabotage himself. According to Emily, who texted me one night with a quiet, "I'm sorry." Mark had been staying on friends' couches, burning bridges at record speed. He'd been fired from a retail job after 2 weeks. "Stealing inventory," she wrote. "He said he was underpaid." I forwarded the message to Detective Harris. She replied with one word: unfortunate. Friday morning, I received another call, this time from an unfamiliar number. "Elena," a man said. "This is David Reynolds, Mark's father." We hadn't spoken since the arrest. "I'm sorry to bother you," he continued, "but I wanted to say, I'm sorry about the watch." I closed my eyes. He never understood limits, David said quietly. His mother made excuses. I worked. We both failed him in different ways. He made his own choices, I said. Yes, David agreed, and now he has to face them. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Mark sat at the defense table in a borrowed suit, hair trimmed, posture carefully humble. He didn't look at me until the judge entered. When he did, his expression flickered. Anger, hurt, disbelief, before settling into something rehearsed. The prosecutor laid out the facts methodically. The text confession, the pawn shop records, the fraudulent charges. Mark's lawyer argued implicit permission, claimed shared finances, emotional misunderstanding. The judge raised an eyebrow. Did he ask before taking the watch? No, Your Honor. Then there was no permission. Proceed to trial. During a recess, Linda cornered me in the hallway. She's offering a plea deal, she whispered. 1 year, probation, restitution. That's between him and the court. He won't take it, she said. He says you'll cave. I smiled sadly. Then he doesn't know me at all. Mark's bail violation came 2 weeks later. The judge was not amused. Mr. Reynolds, she said sharply, you are facing felony charges and you commit additional theft while released on bail? It was a misunderstanding, Mark muttered. Bail is revoked, Linda sobbed. Mark stared at the floor. I felt nothing. He was remanded into custody that afternoon. The trial date was set. In the weeks that followed, my life grew quieter. No pounding on doors, no frantic messages, just space. I started sleeping again. I moved my father's watch into a safety deposit box once it was recovered from the pawn shop, after paying nearly $4,000 in fees to reclaim what was already mine, worth every cent. The trial lasted 3 days. Witnesses testified about the watch. My uncle describing how my father wore it every day, how he'd insisted it go to me. Mark took the stand. He said he didn't think I'd mind, that couples shared things, that I overreacted. The prosecutor leaned forward. So you took it without asking? Yes. And pawned it without asking? Yes. And told her after the fact? Yes. So you stole it? Mark hesitated. That's not how I see it. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Mark slumped. Linda wailed. David stared straight ahead. Sentencing was scheduled for the following month. As Mark was led away, he looked at me. I hope you're happy, he said bitterly. You destroyed my life over an object. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to explain. Sentencing took place 4 weeks later, on a gray Tuesday morning that felt too ordinary for what it carried. I arrived early and sat in the second row, hands folded, posture straight. I wasn't there for closure. I wasn't there for revenge. I was there because finishing things matters. Mark was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit this time. No borrowed suit, no carefully curated humility, just the reality of where his choices had landed him. He looked smaller, not fragile, just diminished, like someone who'd finally run out of excuses and didn't know what to replace them with. Linda sat behind him clutching tissues. Emily was there too, eyes rimmed red, shoulders tense. David sat on the opposite side of the aisle, alone. He didn't look at Linda. He didn't look at Mark. He stared straight ahead, jaw set. The judge reviewed the case slowly, deliberately. Mr. Reynolds, she began, you were convicted of felony theft, fraud, and credit card fraud. While released on bail, you committed additional theft. You have shown no meaningful remorse and repeatedly minimized your actions. Mark shifted in his seat. I loved her, he blurted. I never meant to hurt anyone. The judge's gaze sharpened. Love does not entitle you to other people's property. The prosecutor stood. This wasn't a single lapse in judgment, Your Honor. This was a pattern. Entitlement, deception, and retaliation when faced with consequences. Linda sobbed openly now. Mark's lawyer tried once more, talked about stress, debt, immaturity, suggested probation. The judge shook her head. You stole an irreplaceable family heirloom. You committed fraud. You violated bail. And throughout these proceedings, you have blamed everyone but yourself. She paused. 18 months in state prison, 3 years probation, full restitution, $12,000 for the watch's value, $4,300 for credit card fraud, plus court fees. Linda cried out. Mark went pale. This isn't fair, he said hoarsely. She could have just talked to me. The judge leaned forward slightly. She could have. You could have not stolen. Gavel. That was it. As officers led him away, Mark twisted toward me one last time. I hope you're proud of yourself. I met his eyes calmly. I'm at peace. Linda followed me into the hallway, desperation clinging to her like smoke. She loved you, she insisted. You know that, right? No, I said gently. He loved what I provided. That's not true. Then why did he never ask? She had no answer. Life didn't snap back into place after sentencing. It settled. Quietly. I returned to routines I hadn't realized I'd abandoned. Morning runs, dinners with friends, reading before bed without checking my phone every 5 minutes. Emily reached out once more. I'm sorry, she wrote, for everything. I know, I replied. Take care of yourself. David emailed a week later, asking to meet for coffee. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, two people connected only by shared fallout. I failed him, David said quietly. I worked more to avoid conflict, let Linda smooth things over. I thought time would fix it. Time just made it bigger, I said. He nodded. I'm divorcing her. I wasn't surprised. She still blames you, he added, for everything. Of course she does. He looked relieved when I said it. Mark didn't do well in prison. I didn't know this because I checked. I knew because people kept telling me. He complained about the rules, about being treated unfairly, about having to work kitchen duty. He sent me a letter. I didn't open it at first. When I finally did, it was exactly what I expected. No apology, no accountability, just grievance. You took things too far. Yes, I made a mistake, but you ruined my life over a watch. I'm suffering in here while you're living comfortably. Your father would be ashamed of how cruel you've become. I folded the letter and threw it away. The watch came back to me 2 weeks later after final processing. Holding it again felt strange, heavier than I remembered, colder. I wore it once for my father's birthday. Then I placed it in the safety deposit box. Some things are meant to be preserved, not displayed. 6 months after sentencing, Mark was released early for good behavior. Linda wasted no time. She called from blocked numbers, sent emails begging me to help him get back on his feet, to hire him, to forgive him. I blocked her everywhere. Then Mark showed up at my office building. Security called me. There's a Mark Reynolds downstairs asking for you. Tell him to leave, I said, or I'll report a probation violation. He left. According to Emily, he didn't last long at the job his probation officer assigned him. Took money from the register, said he deserved more than minimum wage. Back to jail. Longer this time. Linda called again, hysterical. This is your fault. No, I said calmly. This is a pattern. I filed for a restraining order that afternoon. Enough was enough. I met Daniel around that time. Not dramatically, not in the aftermath of a breakdown, just normally. He paid his own bills, asked before borrowing anything, listened. When I told him about the watch, he didn't ask how much it was worth. He asked what my father was like. That's when I knew. Life is quieter now. Better. The watch stays safe. My boundaries do too. Some people are meant to be lessons, not lifelong companions. Mark thought he could take what was mine because I'd always given him everything else. He was wrong. And that miscalculation cost him everything. A year has passed since the arrest. Not in the cinematic sense where everything wraps neatly into meaning, but in the quiet, real way, where seasons change, routines settle, and the noise finally fades enough for you to hear your own thoughts again. Mark is back in prison, longer sentence this time. Probation violation layered with new theft charges from the restaurant where he'd been working. According to Emily, he took cash straight from the till, convinced himself it was owed to him because the job was beneath him. When she told me, there was no shock left in me, just confirmation. Some patterns don't break. They repeat until there's nothing left to blame. Linda called the night Mark was rearrested. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her voice sharp with grief and accusation, the same tired script she'd been rehearsing for years. This never would have happened if you hadn't gone to the police. You destroyed him. You destroyed our family. I deleted it without listening to the end. I'd spent too long carrying other people's guilt. Daniel and I moved in together last month. Before we did, he sat me down at his kitchen table with a stack of papers. My credit report, he said, a little sheepish, and my bank statements. I know what you went through. I want everything transparent. I laughed softly. You don't have to do that. I want to. That mattered. Trust isn't grand gestures. It's consistency. It's someone understanding your boundaries without resenting them. The first time he saw my father's watch, he didn't reach for it. He just looked. It's beautiful, he said. The wear, I mean. That's a life lived. I swallowed. Yeah, I said. Exactly. David reached out once more a few weeks ago. We met for coffee again. He looked older than he had a year ago. Lighter, too, somehow. Like setting down a weight you didn't realize you'd been carrying. She never learned, he said quietly. And we taught her that. You did what you thought was best, I replied. He shook his head. No, I did what was easiest. We sat in silence for a while. She blamed you for everything, he added. Still does. I know. She says you're cruel. I smiled faintly. Cruel would have been letting this continue. He nodded. I wish someone had stopped her sooner. I didn't say it, but we were both thinking the same thing. Someone did. Eventually. I received a letter from Mark last week. I almost didn't open it. Almost. It was 3 pages long, written in cramped handwriting. The tone hadn't changed. He still framed everything as an overreaction. Still described his actions as a mistake. Still positioned himself as the victim of my coldness. He wrote that he'd had time to think, that he forgave me, that someday I'd realize I'd gone too far, that my father would be ashamed. I folded the letter neatly and placed it back in the envelope. No response. Silence is sometimes the only boundary left. That evening, I went to the bank. I signed out the safety deposit box and took the watch home. Sat on my couch with it resting in my palm, ticking steadily, indifferent to human drama. I put it on my wrist. The weight felt right. I took a photo, not for Mark, not for Linda, not for anyone involved in that chaos. I posted it with one caption. Some things are irreplaceable. Guard them carefully. Emily liked it. Ryan commented, your dad would be proud of you for standing up for yourself. He's right. My father always worried I gave too much, that I didn't know when to stop being understanding and start being firm. He used to say, kindness without boundaries is just self-erasure. I didn't understand that when I was younger. I do now. Life isn't dramatic anymore. It's peaceful. Daniel and I cook dinner together most nights. We argue about paint colors and where to put the bookshelf. We laugh. We sleep well. There's no tension humming under the surface. No eggshells. No quiet fear of what will disappear next. The watch lives in the safety deposit box again, except for special occasions. My father's birthday, the anniversary of his death, days when I want to feel anchored. When I wear it, I think about him teaching me to ride a bike, about the way he smelled like sawdust and coffee, about how he squeezed my hand in the hospital and told me to always protect what matters. I did. Mark thought he could take something precious because I'd always given him everything else. He mistook generosity for permission, and that miscalculation cost him his freedom, his relationships, and the future he believed he was entitled to. That isn't cruelty. That's consequence. Some people are meant to be part of your story forever. Others exist to teach you when to close the door and lock it behind them. The watch keeps perfect time, just like it did on my father's wrist for 40 years. It will keep time on mine for many more. And someday, if I choose, it will pass to someone who understands that value isn't measured in money, but in memory, respect, and care. Some things are meant to be protected. Some people are meant to be left behind. And learning the difference changed my life.